We welcome you back to another edition of Inside Fever Basketball. This is episode number 3. In the first couple of shows, you got to hear from a pair of rookies. This time we are joined by a WNBA veteran who's now on our broadcasting crew. You see her on the Fever broadcast. She's also been a part of the Fever coaching staff as well. Tully Bevilaqua is with us. And Tully, first of all, let's start here with why we are doing this podcast right now. For those who perhaps weren't tuned in to halftime or postgame of the broadcast for the Indiana Fever against the Chicago Sky, you have a tremendous opportunity coming your way. So it meant that we had to split up the schedule a little bit differently. Instead of you and Bria kind of switching in and out throughout the year, you joined us for the first 9. It'll be Bria the rest of the way. We're going to miss you on the broadcast, but it's for very good reason. Why don't you explain to everybody watching here the opportunity that you have in front of you here in the next couple of days?
Thanks, Pat. But I mean, it was kind of, it was sad to say goodbye to you. It was weird saying goodbye to you all last night. I feel like we're kind of like a family within the Fever family ourselves on the broadcasting side of things. But, you know, I've been fortunate enough to be given an opportunity to be head coach of a women's team in the New Zealand Women's National Basketball League. And this is their inaugural season. There's only 5 teams, and it really came about from another female empowering myself, and that was Lynn Dunn. She was contacted by the general manager over there, and she threw my name in the hat. And after an email and a couple of phone calls, I received the good news that they had decided to go with me as their head coach. And so I'm just excited for this opportunity. You know, first time being a head coach of a senior team, and who knows where this can lead to from here on.
Yeah, I want to get more into this opportunity as we get a little bit later into this show. But the opportunity for yourself, you've been on a coaching staff before. You've, of course, been a player, one of the more cerebral players when you did play. But what does this opportunity to you mean to get to lead a team for the first time?
Well, you know, over the years, like you said, I've been watching, learning, participating as well at times. So, you know, now I really get to use all those skills that I've, I was a sponge. And so now I get to put them into practice and, you know, just kind of see how I cross over, from someone now having to make the decisions. It's a lot easier when you're not at the very top and you can, just run the drills and then let somebody else make all the tough decisions. So now it's, my turn to see if it is something that is a good fit for myself. And it's just one of those opportunities that I think if I said no, I would regret later on not trying it. I'm excited, and I feel like I can combine both my experience as a player for 20 years, 20 years as a senior, plus, I guess, with all the junior years. But, 20 years as a senior player mixed in with that from the coaching side of things, blend them together and put my unique style, imprint it into their system.
I think most people watching this know you're Australian. You are going to New Zealand to coach in this league. So not literally your home country, Tully, but in terms of geographical areas of the world, does this feel a little bit for you like you're going home?
It's really surreal. Even right now, it just blows my mind. Like, because of COVID, I haven't been able to go home for 4 years. And so my first opportunity to get, to go back down under kind of is to New Zealand. And so I'm flying my mum into New Zealand to come and be with me for the first month to help out. I mean, it's just pretty crazy, really. But, you take the opportunities. It gives my mum an opportunity to go to a different country as well, but, to see her grandkids and obviously catch up with myself. But the fact we're doing it in New Zealand is just mind-blowing.
Well, we certainly send you our congratulations. We've got a lot of Indiana Fever to talk. But before we get there, you have a pretty interesting and unique story from a player perspective yourself. You talked about growing up in Australia. So I want you to take me back to when you were a kid in Western Australia. How did you find basketball? And really, how did this become a sport that you would fall in love with and really define so much of your future?
Well, when you grow up in a small country town of about a 5,000 population back then, maybe less, sport was really one of the outlets, outside of school and home. So I had two older brothers, and I pretty much just, piggybacked, off them with whatever they did. And that included some of the sports that weren't available to females now in Australia back then, playing at a professional level, like Aussie rules football, cricket. So I did all of that with my brothers. My dad was coach of pretty much all of those teams that I just mentioned, so it also helped. But, I played everything. Everything was seasonal because you didn't have indoor facilities for basketball. So sports was seasonal. But at the end of the day, when it came down to the age of 15, 16, where it was like, where is my passion? I'm playing all these sports, but where is my passion? And basketball just was clearly above the rest. It wasn't what I was the most talented at. Probably tennis or cricket were a couple of the sports that I probably had more natural ability, but my heart was with basketball. I just love the camaraderie, having teammates around you, and it didn't matter if you did well. It was like getting the excitement from their success too, but still being a part of it. So that was around that 15, 16 years of age that I decided that basketball was kind of the sport that I would now become more of a year-round, traveling to the city for practices. Sometimes it was like 8 consecutive weekends. Mum would have to pack the car up and drive to Perth, which is like a 3-hour drive from where I grew up. So it was very taxing on them, but thankfully, with the support and, when you've got the passion and you want to do it, they allowed me to do it.
At what point for you did playing in the U.S. become perhaps a goal, perhaps a vision that you might be able to put into fruition? When did that ability to potentially play here come into play? And was there ever any hesitation on your part on moving across the world?
Well, I guess it never really came into play as early as it actually happened, because, it took me forever to crack the Australian national team. So, my head was like, how am I expected to go over and make it in the US if I can't even get into this Australian squad? But I did come over in 97, and when the ABL was in its final year before that folded, and they were having tryouts for the season that was supposed to take place. So I came over and I participated in the tryouts. They did the draft and everything. I didn't get picked up in the draft, but then the league folded. So then that's when the WNBA then in 97 started. I didn't put my name in the hat for that. I didn't come back over and participate in any of their tryouts. But in 98, that my agent had, VHSs back then, because we're going back a few years now. So he happened to just, mail out a bunch of my tapes to various teams, and it landed on the desk of the Cleveland Rockers, who at the time were having a lot of injury problems. Susie McConnell-Serio was the point guard with that team back then. And so it was like 3:30 in the morning Australian time, and I get a phone call asking if I would like to go to training camp. And they were midway through training camp too. So it's like, would you like to come and join us in Cleveland for the rest of training camp? And so by 6:30 a.m., I had packed my bags, was heading to the airport, calling my parents on the way to let them know that I was leaving the country to go to Cleveland to, join this WNBA team in the rest of their training camp. And I was fortunate to make the team up until the halfway point, where then I was let go. And that's obviously a whole nother story as well. But, it was just by luck, I think, that I got my foot in the door that very first time. So it's, sometimes with players' careers, all it takes is just that little bit of luck.
And, it's interesting. You mentioned the name Susie McConnell-Serio. For those Pacers fans who are watching along that follow both teams, that is the aunt of Pacers guard now, TJ McConnell. And it's amazing the small world, I guess that basketball is. You touched on just briefly, it's just over your left shoulder there. And frankly, we could do a whole podcast about this. Something you're very passionate about. And in a way, I apologize that we don't have enough time to fully delve into your Australian roots and your basketball playing career. And it's something something that, I know you still keep in very close touch with the current members of Team Australia. I've seen that silver medal, by the way. It's very impressive. But take us back to your Australian playing days and how much pride that you got playing for that team, and how much a part of that is your current identity.
Well, the Australian team is in my experience, has always been a very close-knit group. And so when I finally got the call up, and again, it was, had to wait your time because we had some amazing point guards, Michelle Timms, Annie LaFleur, Jay Cross, Kingy, they all were before me. And so I had to just wait my time. And then when my opportunity came, I did what I did best. And that was just defensive hustle, dive on loose balls, just harass the opponents. My game was never based around scoring 10 plus points, but if I had to shoot the ball, I could, but it was more about distributing. Obviously the game has changed a lot since then. But I was able to do that role extremely well and found myself for quite a few years then, in that backup point guard spot for the Australian team. And, it's amazing with Australians. I mean, even now when they come through here with the WNBA, you can cross paths with Australia. You might not know them quite as well as some of your former teammates in that, but it feels like you've known them for years. We just have that connection with one another. And especially when you're living in a foreign country, it just kind of like makes you feel a little bit closer to home when you see another Aussie. But representing Australia at the World Championships, when I was part of the first Australian national senior team, men or women, to win a gold medal was just, the experience was phenomenal. And then to back it up with a silver medal in 2008 at the Olympics, just having your parents there in the stadium as well in Beijing, China, I had tears streaming down my face the very first time we stepped out on the floor and you could hear your national anthem being played. I was bawling. Just all that emotion of all the practices, all the injuries that you've overcome, all the disappointments along the way of being cut at various other stages. You couldn't take that moment away from me. So it made it all worth it.
Speaking of bawling, it seems like you're getting emotional here, just bringing it up 14 years after the fact. If that doesn't describe to you how passionate you are about this and how much it meant to you, that says it right there, right? Well,
I think you really understand how lucky you are because, you look around the world at how many amazing, and just, here in America, how hard is it to make a squad of 12? A team of just 12 players with the number of athletes you have to choose from. I couldn't imagine, here, Australia's a population of over 20 million. So a little less to pull from, but still you're in a very minute percentage who get the opportunity to represent your country at World Championships or Olympics or at any other, event. And so it does make you, I feel very humble. It just didn't happen as well. I put the work in to get there. And so, it does. You never forget and thank everybody that helped you along the way as well.
You had so much success with the Australian national team, but also in the WNBA too. You won a title, not here with Indiana, but you went to a WNBA finals with the Fever. And recently, in fact, just a little over a week ago, the 2012 team was on hand. And this is a group that you were so close with, so many of those players in your playing days here. You were such a massive part of the building of the franchise into this championship caliber franchise that it turned into. What was that like, seeing all these former teammates back and getting to reminisce with all of them on such a successful and such a fulfilling time frame from a Fever franchise perspective?
Well, the fact that when I caught up with you an hour later than what I should have to get ready for our broadcast, that particular game goes to show it when you play alongside players like Tamika Catchings, Breanne January, there were a couple there that weren't at the reunion. Jessica Davenport wasn't there. Katie Douglas wasn't there. So there was a few that were missing. But when you meet up with these players that you have such a connection with, you can take yourself back there straight away and relive some of the experiences you had together. And it's fun just to share the stories. And, a lot of us have lived such different lives since then. And so there's a lot more to catch up on these days. You've got children to talk about. So you spend a little extra time catching up, but the bond will always be there because of being teammates in those moments. And I'm so glad that these players get to be highlighted well after their careers. Although, Breanne January is still playing in her final year. And it's so weird because when she came in, she was my backup point guard. And now she's talking, like when I was sitting there getting towards the end of my career, now she's that person getting towards the end of her career, talking about the young ones. It's all the feels.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that specifically because you were very influential in Breanne January's first couple of years in the WNBA. Same too with Danielle Robinson. So what is this like for you, especially as you talk about this being, basketball being a small world? You're now broadcasting for D-Rob. You're broadcasting the other day alongside with Breanne January, calling a game that Danielle Robinson is playing in. What's that experience like for you to watch not only the careers that they've had, but turn into the leaders on and off the floor that those two have become?
Well, you can't but not applaud them. I mean, not just great players, but it's them as people themselves. And that's what it's all about. We do what we do basketball wise, but, you get a connection with them personally. And both of those players are exceptional people. And, with Breanne January, I felt her, when we were working together as point guards, Breanne was at the time, lead by example. And then she developed the communication side of things as a leader. D-Rob kind of bit of both. And, we just basically pushed each other. I mean, and that was the fun part. It was like, as much as I was there to help them learn in different ways as rookies in the league, they were still helping me get better as well. Because, I still had to fight for my spots towards the very end of my career. It wasn't like those spots were given to me. I still had to fight against them to keep my spot in, especially in the last 2 years with San Antonio. So they helped push me to another new level as well. So at the end of the day, we all made each other better, and that's what it's all about.
Let's turn the page here to this current Fever team that you've been analyzing on our broadcast through those first 9 games that you were with us for on these broadcasts. Lynn Dunn has talked about the goal this season being improvement, and she doesn't want to necessarily pinpoint specific benchmarks for improvement, but she wants to be able, I think, to look back at all of this at the end of the year. And if you were 10th in a statistic last year, maybe you're 7th this year. Mm-hmm. So under that umbrella of what she is looking for from an improvement perspective, what have been your takeaways so far of what you've gotten to see of the Indiana Fever?
Well, the Fever have become more athletic with the players that they've brought in. You've got 6'4", switching with 6'4" when it comes to substitutions. And it's not just that, it's the length that they then provide, when they're defending. And so the rebounding has definitely been an area of improvement. The pace of the pace of the game and the flow of the game. There's the up tempo now, and combining that with trying to increase that defensive intensity. I think there's starting to be that balance now of being able to play both sides of the floor. At times, obviously, you're going to get mistakes. That's nature of the game, especially when you've got such a young team that have just been thrown together, not like any other team in the league who have at least maybe 6 players coming back, 6 or 7 players. And in some cases, obviously, they're championship players as well, and all-stars and MVPs all mixed into a team. The Fever don't have that luxury of having that mix. They've just brought in these players, a great rookie draft, and now nurturing them over a period of time to turn this franchise around and get them back up to where we've been used to seeing the Indiana Fever.
One thing I want to do here is I want to run through the names of some players, and I want you to put on, I guess, both simultaneously your coach's hat and then your broadcast analyst hat from what you've seen so far. Just kind of give me take away.
I need to get serious here.
There you go. Now you're official.
Okay.
Now you're official. Now you can officially give us this coaching and broadcast analysis. So really, what stands out to you when I say these players' names and kind of maybe what you're looking for the rest of the season from these players? It's been overall a very strong start to the season for Kelsey Mitchell. I know that she is somebody that you and I both felt like there was another potential step in her game. So let's start with Kelsey. And do you feel like so far you're starting to see her take that next step?
Well, different with Kelsey, I think as time goes on, as this team gets more comfortable and the chemistry, I think just taking some of that pressure that I think she feels on herself to have to carry this team offensively is going to just even elevate. It's so hard. It's crazy to say that even when she's scoring nearly 20 points a game right now, but I think her game will even just explode even more when she's got that little less pressure on her shoulders to carry offensively. And she is now very good at working both sides of the floor. She's worked a lot on that right hand. So she's very hard to defend because she's now very comfortable going to that right more than what she was when she first came into the league. We've seen how quickly she can score, and it's not just her scoring now. She's developed in seeing the floor and understanding that she's going to get a lot of defensive attention. And so now she's become a distributor as well. So we're going to see Kelsey Mitchell ending up with numbers like 20 points and 5 assists, 20 points, like 6 assists, because she is now reading the floor, reading her defense, and the more her teammates, like I said, the more comfortable, and once that chemistry gets there, there's going to be more assists being dished out as well. So I think that's a big area of her game now that she's really improved on, but will only get better as the team chemistry gets better.
I'm really glad you brought up that last part because, look, everybody has known even before Kelsey Mitchell got to the WNBA that she was going to be able to score at this level. Just, how well she was able to do that, of course, we had to wait and see, and we're really starting to see that this year. It's the passing and the vision that's so interesting to me. And I think this has been maybe one of the under-discussed storylines nationally or just within, the WNBA social media community. I mean, I don't think people really realize that. Look, depending on when you're viewing this or listening to this, she could be fluctuating statistically. But there was a game we had recently where Kelsey Mitchell was 10th in the league in assists. She was top 10 in assists. This is for a player averaging a little over 2 for most of her career. That's a big jump. And I'm not sure it's gotten enough attention when you talk about her being a more complete player and not just a scorer, at least in this somewhat early portion of the season. To me, this is a fairly dramatic jump, no?
Oh, for sure. And I mean, she's gone from playing college ball where, from what I understand, not having watched a lot, but just kind of reading a lot more about her from her college days. But, basically when the ball got in her hands, she just made it happen and didn't have to rely on, she could get past the defenses, obviously. So it wasn't as much of an emphasis to be dishing the ball off. It was just, you go make a play. Whereas now, and I think over the last couple of years, she's gotten better because she's getting so much defensive attention. She's now able to handle that pressure and see the floor at the same time. So there was one thing to be pressured, but there were some errors, with trying to get that ball out of a trap or to find the next, open player without it being knocked away. Now she's making the plays under pressure, but making the pass to the open player, for the assist. So I think it's been a huge development in her game.
I think we're both really confident she'll end up being an all-star this year. Had they picked all-stars in the 2020 season in the Wubble, she would have been. When you looked at her season by the end of last year, had you picked at the end of the year, I think she would have been. Unfortunately, she got off that slow start to the season. So this seems long overdue, but it does feel like Kelsey Mitchell certainly is going to earn that first all-star appearance this year. Next player on the list.
Yeah, well, definitely. And one more point on Kelsey, though, it's like when you watch her, you have to watch how hard she has to work to get an open shot or, to come off the screens, and she has to do it multiple times. Other players in the league who have more experienced players around them have the luxury of only having to make one cut maybe to get open, or whereas she's having to do a lot more work to get that same shot uncontested. So, it's a credit to her fitness levels as well.
Well, it's interesting you bring that up, and I want to be careful with the wording here because I'm not trying to say that Kelsey Mitchell has reached the level of this player that I'm about to compare her to. But when you think, Tully, about the situation that Kelsey Mitchell has right now that is seemingly improving in terms of the quality of players around her, the players capable of scoring and taking that pressure off. When you look at Kelsey Mitchell and when you look at Jewell Lloyd in Seattle, I think they're a very fascinating couple of players to compare themselves to. And Jewell Lloyd is phenomenally accomplished. And please understand, I'm not saying that Kelsey has reached that level at least yet. Mm-hmm. But she's in a situation, in Seattle where the defenses primarily have to start focusing on Breanna Stewart. And then she's also got Sue Bird in the backcourt, which gets attention. And Sue Bird maybe has the best vision in the history of professional women's basketball, at least at the WNBA level. And look, now that's her own, she has her own challenges there, getting the ball enough with those great players. But like when I look at Kelsey and when I look at what she can become, I do look at Jewell Lloyd, and I do think that as the Fever start to put the players around her, I do think that she can be that caliber of player.
I agree. And, obviously, if you had a crystal ball, it'd be great to see 2 years down the track, obviously how it's playing out. But I totally agree. I mean, you put Kelsey in a team, like Seattle, with those players around you where you're not constantly being double teamed because the double teams, are going towards other players at times. And so, I mean, just think of how many more open shots and looks at the basket that she would be getting uncontested, and wouldn't probably do half the number of steps, if she were to record herself than what she does right now.
All right, we've got 5 more players I want to go through. Let's try to get through them in maybe 10 minutes or so. Let's start with NaLyssa Smith, the number 2 overall pick. Unfortunately, she gets a little bit of an incomplete because she's been injured the last 4 games. And, I don't think there's any surprise, even though she's just a rookie and only played in 5 games. You're really seeing how much the Fever miss her when she's not been on the floor.
Well, really did leave a big hole when she was injured. And so, it's not just the rebounding and the defense. She was really injecting herself in there on the offensive side as well. She's a confident player, and she's confident because she puts the work in, not in a cocky way, but she puts the work in. So she has that air of confidence about her. And came into the league with a no fear attitude. So I love her versatility. She's showing us that she can shoot the 3. She wants to get more consistent from there. So watch out when she starts consistently knocking those shots down, and then, very confident as well, putting it to the floor, doesn't hesitate to put it on the floor when she needs to, kind of has, not that I'm not comparing her, right, obviously to her, but, like we talked about with Seattle, the Breanna Stewart, the 3-point shot, off the dribble, the post moves. NaLyssa Smith could have all of those weapons under her belt consistently, down the track.
Yeah, I think the Fever started off the season 2-2 with NaLyssa Smith. I don't think that's any surprise that they were playing a lot better with her. Let's move over to Emily Engstler. Marion Stanley was asked a question here recently about all the players she coached. Is there a comp with Emily Engstler? And she struggled. I don't know if you can think of one, but I think safe to say the final game that you broadcast in Chicago was the best game, at least to date, up until that point of her young career.
Well, when I think of Engstler, I mean, I absolutely love this player. Just the work ethic, not flashy like some of the other players that have come into the league, but just that work ethic, the grit, determination. To me, she's kind of like the heartbeat of a team, with just the way she goes about her business and just the persistence, and it's both ends of the floor. She just is all over the place and has that magnetism, wherever the ball's going to be on a rebound. She just is kind of like a magnet, just have that natural ability to know where to be at the right time. And her stats at the end in a short period of time, I mean, you look down and she's got 7 rebounds, and probably you don't get the deflections, but she's got a couple of steals. She's getting in there with it. She's 6'1", but you talk about someone that's using all of her inches defensively. I mean, she's nearly getting 2 blocks a game, I think. Just a natural ability defensively to read the ball. And it's just that, I don't know, I think because I feel like that's how I used to play a little bit. I see a little bit of her in terms of just that determination characteristic. I absolutely love her game.
It's funny, as you were talking, I was going to give you the comp that I just thought of, which is Tully Bevilaqua with like 8 or 9 more inches, right?
I know, that would have been nice too. And the thing with Angsler is just, obviously when getting comfortable with the pace of the game, and getting her legs underneath her, get that shot, because, she can shoot from the 3-point line, but hasn't percentage-wise been shooting well there, but we know she is capable of. But I think that, and that's just going to come with time and with all the, experience that she's getting now in her rookie year and getting a feel for the pace of the game, getting the reps on the training track. I think by the end of the season, we're going to see what she can do from the 3-point line.
The 6th pick was Lexi Hull. I think she's very much still a work in progress here. This is another one that almost feels like a little bit of an incomplete grade because we haven't gotten to see a ton of her. To me, in the last couple of games that she has played, she's looked a lot more comfortable than she looked in those first couple of games. And I'm wondering if you can speak to, your situation was very different. This isn't necessarily a parallel when you came into the league versus when Lexi Hull came into the league. But just how much everything changes and so quickly for these rookies. And an adjustment period is probably more the norm versus the other way around.
Yeah, well, and unfortunately, when you haven't had the time to, practice a lot, you go from sitting on the bench to, your first shot might be a 3-point shot. So, and sometimes when you don't have the chemistry, as this team doesn't always have a flow offensively, it's hard to have a Hull go out there and you're not getting the ball when you're open. I'm ready to shoot that 3, which is one of your strengths, or the ball's not coming at you in that position where you can just catch and shoot it. So you're having to take an extra second or so, by which time defense is now on you and you're either rushing the shot or I think she's definitely showed more composure with each game and each opportunity that she's gotten on the floor. We're seeing her defensive abilities as well now too. I think we all kind of just think about the offensive game, but Hull has definitely showed that she's very capable as well defensively in playing significant minutes and shutting some players down on the wing there. But it's a tough position when you're only coming in for a few minutes here and there. You're not getting time on the practice to replicate what your role is on the team. But she's starting to get a flow on it now.
And as you discussed there, it is more often than not that a player needs some time to get adjusted to this different level of game from so many areas. And it tends to be rare when a player comes in game number 1 as a rookie and is very impactful. When it does happen, it tends to be players like NaLyssa Smith, the number 2 overall pick, a superstar at Baylor, projected to be a major impact type of player in the WNBA, which makes what Queen Egbo is doing, Tully, so fascinating, because it's not often you see a 10th pick in the draft be this helpful, this impactful right away. She was thrown in as the starting center, whether she was ready or not, and it turned out she was pretty darn ready.
She has, she's starting to become a monster in the paint there defensively. I mean, her length, her span, at 6'4", and then just the length, and she's now learning how to play with that without fouling, which at the very start of the season, there would be that, as you do when you get in the league, you want to try and block every shot, but she has done a good job of learning that she doesn't need to do that to influence a shot or to make the block. She's just got to get the timing right, just wall up, keep her hands straight up. And like I said, just with that timing, with that length, she has become a monster and has really stepped up in the absence of Nalissa Smith due to her injury. And it's so much fun to watch. I mean, she gets hyped up. I love the hypeness that she brings as well when she does make a defensive play. The offensive opportunities will come, and I think that's an area where, with working with the coaches, watching a lot of film, trying to develop and get that feel of when's the right time for me to take one-on-one opportunities, or when to kind of move the ball to the opposite side of the floor rather than think that I have to make a play all the time. Those she will learn. But I just love watching her play. She brings so much energy and so much effort, and talk about baptism of fire with the all-star players that she's come up against, and she hasn't backed down.
She really hasn't. I think that confidence is what strikes me the most about her. And there was a play in that final game that you and I did together against Chicago. Fourth quarter, she's got the ball at the top of the key. Mm-hmm. Candace Parker is draped on her, and she starts to drive. And I will admit, the whole time I'm going, I don't know if this is the best idea. I don't know if this is the best idea. I don't know if the best idea. She took it right at one of the better players defensively in the history of the league, banked in a huge shot. And look, as typical of when you get a player who is fearless like that and is a rookie, she's going to make some mistakes too. But I thought that play was just such a great summation of who Queen Egbo is, the confidence that she brings to the floor, and ultimately the versatility that she brings to Fever.
Well, I remember a play very early in the game where it was a back to the basket with Candace Parker on her, and Candace won that battle. And so part of me is thinking, well, maybe she was self-coaching herself out there on the floor. And on that occasion that you talked about, realized that maybe her advantage over Candace Parker might be her speed, and having Candace have to move defensively, take her outside of the keyway and attack from there. And so I'm going to give her credit for coaching herself out there and finding a different way to beat her opponent. But I do remember that play, and it was, it just shows you the talent that these players have and what we're still to see.
Let's close here with Destiny Henderson and Tully. I think this is, for me, when you look at minutes and Marianne Stanley, I think this is maybe the toughest decision she has, for good reason. Her leader, Danielle Robinson, you know her very well. She's been very effective on the floor. And you've got Destiny Henderson, who I think is showing she deserves more minutes. She got them against Chicago in that final game we did together, and a good problem to have, but still a very fascinating decision here coming the rest of the year for Marianne Stanley on how you divvy up those minutes and ultimately how many of them they can play together too.
Well, Destiny Henderson did a great job when, like, Danielle Robinson, wasn't there, and so she had to lead the team. And so it has been an interesting transition, like you said, to divvy those minutes around. And sometimes now both of those players are on the floor together, depending on the opposition and what's going on. But I think she's making her case, with every time she's out there. And that's all you can do as a player. Just go and do what you can, regardless of how many minutes you're out there for, but do what you can to make the case, for more minutes. And she comes from a program, obviously a very successful program that had one of the best, point guards in the WNBA for many years, in Dawn Staley. And I can only imagine just how valuable having a coach like her and being a point guard as well has just elevated her game. And she's just such a heads up player. Like, I remember from the first game that she played, and I'd mentioned to you about, I really liked what she did. I wish she would keep the ball in her hands a little bit more instead of picking it up. And I kid you not, like, the next game, it was like she'd clearly gone and watched film, or it was through coaches, maybe a point of emphasis, and she had rectified that problem. So, her ability to change and to learn, which is one of the things that she spoke about when she was drafted was she's going to get in here, she's going to learn, and she learned from one game. And, she's shooting the ball extremely well, a great 3-point shooter. And like you said, it's a good problem to have. And, I'm sure it's all going to work itself out, by mid-season.
When you look at where the Fever are in their season, somewhere between a quarter the way through, a third the way through here, is there anything that stands out to you, like the Fever need to do this well or continue to improve in this area as a team for them to see the type of improvement that they're looking for by season's end?
Well, I think for them to be successful, they need to continue with playing a fast-paced game. I think that's going to be key to their success. And yes, it's also going to come from their defense. And the areas that I feel right now at times is, just on that communication where, they'll lose a player, 2 players to go into one. I mean, all teams have this happen at times, but we've seen it on a few occasions. And it's just communication factor and dealing with different types of screening actions and defending those. And again, the communication comes into play and all being on the same page and knowing what you're doing for probably different players out there. So I think that's a key area for them is continuing to clean up on the pick and rolls, defense, the back screens, and, communication.
All right, we are catching you here still in the U.S. By the time this airs and people are watching or listening to it, you will officially be over in New Zealand. You got a very long flight coming up ahead of you. But once you get there, I know people are going to be eager to be following along. You're active on social media. Will you be remaining active on social media? And for those who want to follow your team, your coaching journey, what's the best way to do it?
Definitely. I'm on Twitter and Instagram, Tully41 on Twitter and Instagram. But yes, I will definitely be updating all my social media platforms to drop the website of the league once I find out if they are broadcasting or there's a live stream that they that I can put a news flash out to go to watch the games. I'll definitely be doing that. A lot of family and friends, not just obviously here in the States, but obviously in Australia. And there's people all across the world. So there's a lot of people waiting to hear that. And I will definitely update everybody.
Yeah, well, we can't wait to see you have success over there. Congratulations on this tremendous opportunity. We will miss you. We'll be enjoying watching you from afar. The time change over there, I will tell you, I'm not smart enough to figure it all out. It's like 16 hours or something absurd like that. So hopefully there'll be an opportunity to actually watch the games. I've been over there once and I've experienced just how absurd the time difference is. So I think we'll probably be like, I don't know, eating lunch or something when you're playing the next day, but we will give it a shot.
For sure. I mean, this last couple of weeks of trying to, work Fever, organize New Zealand. I've lost a few hours of sleep, but it's all worth it. At the end of the day, I can always catch up on some sleep on the plane.
Well, we appreciate you. We appreciate you telling your story, analyzing the Fever here with us. We had a great first 9 games with you on the broadcast, and we wish you best of luck here as you head to New Zealand.
Thank you, Pat, and let's go Fever.
All right, that's Tully Bevilaqua here in episode 3 of Inside Fever Basketball. Again, if you watch this episode in its video form, please remember that it is also available in its podcast form, wherever you get your podcasts. Just search Inside Fever Basketball. And likewise, if you've listened here, we are also available on our YouTube channel. You can catch, if you've only listened, check out the background behind Tully here. You can see her 3 jerseys, including her Team Australia uniform. All of this is available on YouTube as well. We have got the vast majority of the remainder of the games available for you for free if you are in the kind of the Midwest region. Just follow the Indiana Fever on Facebook. The broadcast will be there. Bria Goss will be stepping in to Tully's chair. And for the handful of games that are not available on Facebook, they will be on Valley Sports. So every game the rest of the way, you saw and heard Tully earlier, it'll be Bria joining us the rest of the way. For Tully Bevilaqua, I'm Pat Boylan. That wraps up episode 3 of Inside Fever Basketball.